Hey, welcome to Anime What Ifs. This is part 17 of What If Naruto Married Temari. A tapping at the bedroom window woke Naruto from his very pleasant dreams. He tried to shift his pillow to cover his head. This didn't work out very well for the simple reason that he was currently using Temari's chest as his pillow and she did not appreciate his actions. "Naruto," she murmured sleepily. "My breasts are not toys. Stop messing with them and go answer the window or there will be consequences." Naruto paled and withdrew his hand hastily. Open-ended threats from Temari were never, ever good. He much preferred something simple like "stop or I'll beat you into the ground with my fan." At least that was over quickly. Those open-ended threats lingered and he would spend all day just waiting for the hammer to drop. Scooting over to the edge of the bed, he stood and stretched with a yawn. Padding over to the window, he threw it open and gave his visitor an unamused glare. "Kakashi-sensei? Why are you here?" Ma, no need to get so snippy, Naruto," Kakashi said, not bothering to look up from his book. "You missed our meeting for training, so I thought I'd come get you." Naruto gave Kakashi a blank stare. "What training?" He paused for a second and then could barely contain his glee. "You mean you're actually gonna train me? Is it gonna be something cool?" Naruto stopped and considered his old teacher. "Oh, it's gonna be something lame like tree climbing, isn't it?" Kakashi's sweat dropped behind his book. "Ma, so untrusting." Giving Naruto one of his infamous eye smiles, he cheerfully addressed his old student. "I thought that you would be happy to learn more about Kushina-sama's Kenjutsu style when Jiraiya-sama asked me to teach you. I suppose I could always go tell Hokage-sama that you aren't interested." Turning to leave, he stopped when a hand latched onto his arm. Turning back, he was struck by the mix of suspicion and longing he saw in Naruto's eyes. "Ah, he doesn't trust me about training, but I mentioned Kushina-sama." "All right, met me at our old training ground in half an hour." "Are you going to actually be there on time, Kakashi-sensei?" Naruto asked, his voice heavy with suspicion. "As much as I need help with Kachan's Kenjutsu, I do have other things I need to do today." Kakashi gave Naruto another eye smile and vanished in a swirl of leaves, leaving a cursing Naruto standing in the window. His rant was cut off when a pillow slammed into his head. "Too loud," Temari called as she snuggled back into the blankets. "Some of us are trying to sleep." Rubbing the back of his neck with a sheepish grin, Naruto wandered over to stand by Temari's side of the bed. Reaching down, he stroked her hair gently and was amused when she pushed back against his hand. "Heh, just like a big kitty, not that I'm going to actually say that," he mused with a grin. Leaning over, he wrapped his arms around her and rested his cheek against her head. "I have to go train," he whispered. "You have anything to keep you busy today?" Temari nodded drowsily. She confirmed. "Afternoon class with Tsunade-sama, then a checkup at the hospital. I should be done by then. You want me to come along for the checkup?" Temari jerked her head, slamming it into Naruto's cheek on accident. "Oh, Kami, no," she said hurriedly. "I accept no responsibility for taking you to the hospital or any damage that may result from your presence there." Naruto held his cheek and pouted. "You make it sound like I'm a walking disaster or something." Temari stared at her husband incredulously. "You do remember what happened the last time you came to visit, don't you?" Naruto's pout deepened. "So was not my fault." Temari rolled her eyes and lay her head back on her pillow. "So you keep saying, but I was there, Naruto. I don't know how you destroyed an entire lab, pretty sure I don't want to know actually, but I do know that it was you." Naruto crossed his arms and scowled. "It was just a small fire jutsu, how was dash dot?" He was cut off when Temari stuck her fingers in her ears. "I told you, I don't want to know. That way when Tsunade asks me next time how my baka husband destroyed part of her hospital, I can tell her I have no idea, and I won't be lying." Naruto snorted. "You, so mean." Leaning down again, he planted a kiss on the top of her head. I'll be back before you then. Maybe I can do something about all our recent unwelcome guests. Temari waved a hand lazily. Whatever. Go away, I'm sleepy. Chuckling to himself, Naruto got dressed for the day and wandered downstairs to get something to eat. Chewing on a piece of toast, he noticed the picture that caused all the problems still sitting on the table, and he flipped it over to read it in morbid curiosity. Reading the offer to buy Temari off, he narrowed his eyes in thought. The wording did not seem like something Koyukihime would say. Seeing the note from Niji on the floor, he picked it up and compared the writing. And we have a winner, he thought sarcastically. White-eyed team pranked me. He actually pranked me. He muttered in disbelief. Oh, you will pay Niji. Naruto began to cackle madly. Oh yes, you will pay. Arriving at his old training ground, Naruto leaned against the bridge and closed his eyes. Soaking in the atmosphere, he began to reminisce. Some of the best and worst times of his life happened here, and he supposed it was fitting that Kakashi chose this place for their training. Hearing a small pop, he opened his eyes to see Kakashi standing next to him. Place brings back memories, doesn't it, Kakashi-sensei? Naruto said quietly. Kakashi hummed non-committally. Naruto eyed the man quizzically. You know, I never did ask before. Why did you focus so much on Sasuke when we were Team 7? Kakashi grabbed the bridge railing hard enough for the wood to groan in protest as he stared into the swirling waters of the river. I suppose I saw a lot of myself in him. He finally said in a defeated tone. I saw the dark path he was headed on, and I thought he needed more from me to stop. Kakashi lifted his face and met Naruto's gaze. I also had orders to keep an eye on him. He was considered a flight risk. Naruto felt his temper flare. That's it? He said with a low tone. That's all it was? You don't teach us anything but tree walking, and that under threat from an A-class nuke nin. You abandoned Sakura-chan and me after the second part of the Chunin exams to train Sasuke, and that's all you have to say about it? Kakashi turned himself to fully face the irate boy. The Sandaime had a great deal of faith in you, Naruto, and believe or not, so did I. I didn't know that you already knew Ebisu, but he really is good at training basics, and he was supposed to drill you in those until Jiraiya-sama came to begin training you. Naruto held his hand up to stop Kakashi. Wait, Aro-sennin was supposed to be my trainer for the third stage? Slowly his face turned red with repressed rage. Do you have any idea what I had to do to convince him to train me? He roared. Kakashi watched in silence as Naruto began to mutter various plots for revenge on the Toad Sannin. Some were quite clever, and he shuddered when he heard some of the others. The only thing they all seemed to have in common was a great deal of pain. Maybe I shouldn't have told him that? Waiting for Naruto to wind down, Kakashi found himself being glared at by Naruto. You are a fantastic shinobi. Kakashi-sensei. Naruto said. You were, however, a really bad Jonin-sensei. Naruto turned and faced the Hokage monument. I don't think my father would have been happy with the way you handled things. Still, I'm not a genin anymore. Turning back to Kakashi, Naruto held his hand out. I promise I'll try not to hold the past against you, sensei, but you're gonna have to earn it. Kakashi considered the hand in front of him. There was much more to the story than he told Naruto, but he couldn't refuse the handshake without making the boy suspicious. Reaching forward, he shook Naruto's hand while simultaneously hoping that this wouldn't come back to bite him in the ass later. Well, now that we have that settled, how much of your mother's Kenjutsu style do you actually know? Kakashi asked. Naruto tapped his chin as he considered how to answer. I'm not sure, he said reluctantly. I've studied the scroll she left, and it's been useful, but I didn't really have anything to compare it against. Kakashi said. Alright, I want you to draw your Kodachi and use the forms you know. Should let me know let me know what we need to work on. Naruto nodded and drew his kodachi from its place in the seal on his arm. Dropping into his mother's kenjutsu stance, he began to dance the forms as smoothly as he could. Losing himself in the rhythm, he failed to notice the widening of Kakashi's eye in surprise. Kakashi was dumbfounded as he watched Naruto. There were many rough edges in the forms Naruto was using, but for having trained himself from a scroll, even counting in the bunshin Naruto was sure to have used, Naruto's swordsmanship was at a much higher level than Kakashi had thought. So, all I need to do is grind out the rough spots and teach him some of the more advanced kata, Kakashi thought to himself. Once that's taken care of, he can branch out and make this style his own. Finishing the forms he knew, Naruto waited while Kakashi collected his thoughts. That was very good, Naruto. Much better than I was expecting, to be honest. Naruto swelled up a bit at the praise but deflated with Kakashi's next sentence. Still, we have a lot of work to do if you want to master that style. Kakashi began running Naruto through the correct way to move and had him create clones to practice each individual movement before he began the next. Time flew by for the two as the field slowly filled with more and more copies of Naruto. Eventually reaching the end of the basics, Kakashi debated more advanced training. Gazing over the clones, he decided that Naruto was better served taking a day or two to polish his skill before building on it. He also had something he needed to talk to Naruto about. Motioning for Naruto to sit, Kakashi sat next to him. Naruto, I've noticed today that you seem a bit on edge. What's bugging you? Naruto sat and stared at his hands. He debated if he should talk to Kakashi about it given the past, but remembered his promise to try to put it behind him. Perhaps Kakashi could help him. He certainly wasn't finding answers on his own. Kakashi-sensei, how do you deal with killing? Kakashi sucked in a breath and carefully put his book away. In hindsight, the problem was completely obvious. Despite his background, Naruto was one of the most compassionate people Kakashi had ever met. Of course he was going to have issues with his first kills. Naruto, my sensei once told me that the meaning of shinobi is one that endures. I believe he got the phrase from Jiraiya-sama because I've heard him use it as well. I suppose the question is, how do you feel about killing? I hate it. Naruto said quietly, still staring at his hands. I suppose one of the reasons I hate it was that little moment of triumph I felt when I did it. It made me feel like a monster, like I was the fox. Do you think your father was a monster? Kakashi asked quietly and was answered by Naruto shaking his head no. He personally killed thousands of Iwa-nin during the last war. If that didn't make him a monster, why would a few you didn't enjoy make you one? Naruto was surprised when Kakashi tossed an arm over his shoulder. I can see that you're still not convinced. So, what would have happened if you hadn't done what you did? Naruto shook his head when he considered that. If he hadn't killed those Snow and Sound Nin, some of his precious people would have died in their place. Seeing Naruto's expression change, Kakashi gave him an eye smile. Sensei also said something else. No matter what you do it for love. If you do, you can always find your way back to the light. You don't have to like killing, in fact I expect you never will. You just have to simply accept that it is part of our way of life. You may mourn, you may regret, but always remember what would happen if you didn't act. Naruto nodded woodenly. Perhaps Kakashi was right, his internal turmoil was certainly lessened after considering his words. Perhaps the reason Temari seemed so at ease after she killed that Sound Kunoichi is because she already accepted this. I certainly don't see her as a monster for it, maybe I am being too harsh with myself. Letting Naruto stew for a short time, Kakashi stood. Alright, I want you to dispel the clones and then run through the kata again. He held up a hand. Wait, I almost forgot, Guy wanted me to pass on a message. He said that the next time you have to give 10-10 explosive tags, you should remember to collect them after. Naruto raised an eyebrow. He said that? Kakashi smiled. I might be paraphrasing. He was rather excited. also looked a bit scorched. He chuckled when Naruto winced. Bracing himself, Naruto began dispelling each group of clones in order of creation. Seeing Kakashi watching him curiously, he explained. It hurts like hell if I just dispel them all at once. Seeing Kakashi nod his understand, Naruto continued until the final group. Standing, he once again drew his Kodachi and lost himself in the dance. Kakashi watched with satisfaction as Naruto smoothly slid across the ground. The decision to focus on the basics was paying off very well. Tomorrow they could begin work on more advanced forms and then linking everything together. He felt a brief twinge of jealousy about Naruto's ability to train with clones, but it passed when he considered what Naruto had to deal with. Bunshin training versus dealing with Kyuubi, yeah, no. Finishing the forms and being dismissed by Kakashi with orders to report for more advanced training tomorrow, Naruto wandered back towards his house. Stopping for a moment to study the remains of the seal he'd first broken through when he'd inherited the estate, Naruto wandered into the garden lost in his thoughts. So, my father had the entire estate sealed off before I broke the seal. I don't want to seal everything off, but I wonder if it's possible to modify the existing array to ward off unwelcome guests? Would certainly be faster than doing it from scratch if it works, but only if I can change it. Assuming I can even modify one of two sand seals. Lost in his thoughts, Naruto almost didn't see Sakura sitting quietly on a bench near the koi pond, staring into the water. Perhaps it was a lingering remnant of his old crush on her, but that particular shade of pink never failed to get his attention. Deciding he would have to stop and think about that at a later date, Naruto crossed to where Sakura was and sat next to her. Sakura-chan? Whatcha doing? Sakura jerked in surprise, not having noticed Naruto's presence. Raising her fist to whack him over the head, she paused and stared at her fist. Slowly, she lowered her hand while Naruto watched in some confusion. Gomen, she muttered, standing. I didn't mean to bother you. Bowing, she turned to leave, but was stopped when Naruto grabbed her arm. Sit, he commanded. Pulling her down onto the bench, Naruto studied her carefully. What happened this time? Sakura fidgeted nervously. Well, I went out into the village today. I wondered if the past few weeks would have changed my parents' mind about things. I'm guessing the answer was no. Naruto asked dryly. Sakura shook her head. Everywhere I went, the people were staring at me and whispering behind my back. It was horrible, I felt like a bug in a jar. Naruto sighed. Yeah, trust me, I get where you're coming from. My entire life they either ignored me or hated me, and now they try to kiss my ass like that would make me happy. Naruto snorted. I'd almost rather go back to being ignored. The civilians are just so damn troublesome. The two shared a snicker at Naruto blatantly stealing Shikamaru's catchphrase. Placing a hand on her shoulder, Naruto gently squeezed. Things will work out, Sakura-chan. You just have to believe in yourself. I remember that Ino-chan said you were really good in the medical classes, maybe you should go with Temari and train with Bachan? When Sakura whimpered a bit at the thought of dealing with the villagers on her way to the hospital, Naruto smiled reassuringly. Don't worry. If you're with Temari, nobody will dare say anything. Sakura smiled weakly. He had a point, Temari wasn't likely to stand for anything like the catcall she'd faced earlier in the day. Will she help me though? Sakura asked. Naruto's grin spread. Yeah, she will. She's not nearly as dispassionate as she likes to make it seem. Naruto tapped his chin and hummed in thought. Still doesn't really like you though. Might want to do something about that, Sakura-chan. Laughing a bit at the look on Sakura's face, Naruto headed inside, noticing Scarlet sneaking up on Sakura from the corner of his eye. He almost wished he could stick around and watch Sakura short out when Scarlet got close enough, but he figured he needed to get started on researching the perimeter seals. Several hours later, Temari found Naruto glaring at a scroll sitting on the study desk. You seem displeased. She noted coolly. Naruto glanced up and nodded at Temari. Yeah, I just found out that I can't use two sand seals for security. When activated, they create a barrier like when we took Reynard into my head to visit the fox. The problem is that it encloses everything within the perimeter and leaves no way in or out. For obvious reasons, that isn't going to work. Naruto ran a hand through his hair tiredly. I'm gonna have to design something from scratch, which is gonna suck. Temari nodded to show she was following along. What about implementing it? I thought that would be the real problem. Naruto smiled at her smugly. Tisk, you're forgetting my bunshin Temari-chan. Implementing it won't be a problem. He turned back to the desk with a snarl. No, the problem is designing something flexible enough, but with enough strength. Temari placed her hand on her hip. Well, you're done with it for today. It's time for super, and then you're going to pamper your wife. Pamper my wife? Naruto asked with some confusion. Ano, what does that mean, exactly? Temari smirked. My legs and feet are sore and my body aches. Any idea whose fault that would be? Naruto nodded. Oh, if you wanted a foot rub and a massage, you should have just asked. He chided his wife. Temari just grinned. Nah, takes all the fun out of it for me. Waiting for him to link arms with her, she poked him in the side with her finger. We both know who wears the pants in this family. Naruto chuckled. Remind me, have I ever seen you wearing pants? Temari gently whacked the back of his head. It's an expression, baka husband. Naruto laughed and continued to bicker fondly with Temari as they went upstairs. Despite everything, today had been a good day. A dark-clothed figure rolled over the wall of the Higwa compound and hit the ground soundlessly. Darting into cover, the figure watched the patrolling guards carefully before slowly working his way across the grounds. He had several close calls and he mentally thanked Kami the Higwa never seemed to use their bloodline inside their own grounds unless training. Reaching his destination, he silently slid inside the manor and quickly padded to his destination. Sliding the door open, he confirmed his target was inside before he entered. Looking down at the sleeping Niji, Uzumaki Namikaze's Naruto had a truly evil smile plastered across his face. A loud scream sounded across the village the next morning and Naruto smiled as he sipped his tea on the back balcony. Niji had pranked him, Naruto had pranked back. Honors were now even. Still, he mused. I wonder how long it took Niji to realize he had short blonde hair, whisker marks, and was wearing orange. Dismissing the thought from his mind, Naruto prepared for the day's training with a smile. The week passed quickly for Naruto, though he still hadn't quite gotten the formula right for the security seal. The training with Kakashi paid off very well. A freestyle spar with their blades at the end of the week had resulted in a stalemate. Admittedly, Kakashi hadn't been going full out, but he had admitted to being forced to use at least low jonin speed to avoid Naruto's blade. Quite the achievement given that he had first picked up a blade only a few months beforehand. Cuddling with Temari, Naruto decided he might as well get the subject on his mind over and dealt with. Temari-chan, you still awake? He asked quietly. Temari rolled over to face him. What? She asked sleepily. How would you feel about adding Sakura to Clan Uzumaki? Naruto asked hurriedly. Temari's eyes snapped open, then narrowed. Naruto, we've discussed this and I believe you told me you didn't want to marry her. Naruto raised the arm Temari wasn't laying on defensively. I said that and I meant that. I'm not talking about marriage though. I'm talking about adopting her into Clan Uzumaki. Temari considered that while continuing to glare at her husband. Explain. She commanded curtly. I've had a clone tail Sakura-chan when she leaves the compound. Naruto admitted. The way the civilians are treating her reminds me a lot of when I was younger. Seems that since she was rejected by Uchiha-sama, the regular townsfolk see her as trash. Naruto paused while some unpleasant memories passed through his mind. I think it would do wonders for her if she could identify with being part of a clan again. Besides, the civilians would have to treat her better or risk offending me, and given how much they suck up to us when we go out. Naruto trailed off. Temari sighed and pulled Naruto's face close to hers. I will reluctantly admit that you have a point. If I say no, what would you do? She searched his face while she waited for his answer. I would do nothing. He told her with complete honesty. Sakura-chan is my friend, but you are my wife and co-head of the clan. If you do not accept her, I will not adopt her into the clan, but I will never stop helping her. Temari closed her eyes and considered his answer carefully. Very well, I will agree to this. I assume you found something in your mother's papers about this? Naruto nodded. Yes, the scroll is sitting on the desk in the study. It has the Uzumaki swirl on it. Since I'm back on mission rotation tomorrow, I assume Bachan will be sending me out. If you would like to read it over while I'm gone, you're more than welcome. Temari rolled over and then pushed herself back against him, getting comfortable. Fine, I'll look it over, but for now, let's just go to sleep, okay? Naruto draped his free arm over Temari and gently stroked her protruding stomach. Sounds good. The next morning, Naruto stood in front of Tsunade, his eye twitching. Standing next to him, Shikamaru looked bored, but a faint undertone of irritation could be seen in his eyes. On his other side, Tenten was staring at Naruto with puppy eyes, trying to convince him to hand over more explosive tags. She'd tried some of the standard tags sold in her parents' shop, but after using Naruto's modified tags, they left her unsatisfied. She debated telling Naruto she would bear his children to get her hands on the formula for those tags, but in the end decided that angering Temari would be a bad thing. Seriously, Bachan? Naruto whined at Tsunade. You're sending the three of us out to find a ferret? Tsunade nodded as she read the mission scroll. Yes, we've been contacted by a clan, this is a valid mission. Bachan, this sucks. Naruto complained loudly, ignoring the twitch over Tsunade's eye. Naruto, she barked. If you want to make Jonin, this sort of behavior is unacceptable. Naruto snapped to attention. My apologies, Hokage-sama, we shall of course complete our orders to the best of our abilities. Even if it is a complete waste of time. Gathering the assignment scroll, Naruto motioned for the squad to form up and led them out. As soon as the doors closed, he turned to face the team. Okay, this blows. Let's just get this done as fast as we can and then try to forget it ever happened. He was amused when both teammates nodded vigorously. Seems he wasn't the only one that thought this mission was a waste of time. Alright, let's get going. Hope you liked this episode. The next one is coming soon.